All right, welcome on back. I don't know how much of an intro or an outro to do on these things, but this is another installment of the Minecraft Musings type of video. And I gotta say, I would definitely recommend this. Like the way that YouTube integrates with PS5, it's very easy to do these recordings. And yeah, so definitely in the grand scheme of things, for those that don't know, if this is your first A-Rye video, yeah, I'm A-Rye, Alex, whatever, and I try to document what I do because I like to describe myself as a bull in the china shop as far as it comes to tech. So that is my career. I work in IT and been working in IT for quite a while. I have an undergrad in bachelor's of science in applied computing technologies, which is like computer science. Anyways, long story short, I'm a computer nerd by trait and by interest, and I wanted to get into streaming mostly for my own kiddos, which as soon as they're old enough will have their own channels. But figured I'd go ahead and bust into that china shop and see how many like snags I can hit, how many bugs or hardships, or that's probably a little exaggerated, but inconveniences. There you go. When it comes to streaming, recording, and sharing content. So, anyways, this is my musings, and I just basically talk to myself, and I prefer it this way for now, just so I can explain things without any, not necessarily interruptions, but they are. I mean, not ill-intentioned, but when you're talking to someone and explaining things, like it's pretty rude to just hold the phone for like an entire, not take breaths, not allow for input from the other party, and just kind of like hijack the whole conversation. But then again, you have lectures and university, and that's where it is the professor talks at you for a good hour or so. And so, anyways, so this is kind of like a mix between it. So at least you're watching some meditative type Minecraft, but at the same time like thinking about these things. So, anyways, what I really wanted to talk about was I kind of broke into some pretty deep concepts as far as two of the biggest taboos go, as far as society and all that, religion and politics specifically. And it all started on a tweet. I was responding to something, and I was basically equating alcohol to the base root of all of our basically crime problems. All criminal behavior can be traced back to either directly or indirectly related to alcohol in some way. So either someone's life isn't going the best, a lot of it thanks to alcohol, or it's directly like, a drunk driver crashes and kills somebody, or the alcohol leading to other substances, hard drugs especially. Um, and I was just making a point is like, without alcohol, we wouldn't have a lot of the substance abuse issues we have today. And, which a lot of people seem to understand, especially people that have a history with substances in, pretty much any form. They understand that it's like, yeah, normal people, if they don't have a bit of alcohol in them or they don't get a couple of drinks down, they don't be like, oh, let's go do some drugs. Like, let's go do some meth or heroin or whatever. So, like, um, but anyways, and the basis of all this is my constant pondering, musing about criminal behavior, how to fix it, how to prevent it, and not sounding it. It's like it's not us because I do have a checkered past myself, so it's like it's not. I'm not any mightier than thou by any means, but I do have a lot of friends and family in law enforcement and corrections, and I worry about them, and I worry about all the people, the friends and family that I have that are on the receiving end of corrections and law enforcement. So, yeah, it's a pretty healthy mix. Anyways, and things are getting better. So I like to remind people that even in my lifetime, the prison system has gotten a lot better, although it still has a lot of room for improvement. And there are some programs that did get cut, but should be able to come back. Or, I mean, if we get to a point, we won't even need programs to begin with. So, but this still applies to everybody because even if you've never had any issues with substances, alcohol included, then you still know somebody that does or has, might be currently, maybe imbibing too much, so you think, and I intentionally leave out weed because up until currently, the last few years, marijuana was not even a viable alternative to alcohol because it was illegal. And still is illegal federally, so it's this kind of awkward period. But for a lot of people, being able to switch from alcohol to marijuana is just that simple step is already causing quite a difference. I mean, Colorado It pretty much seems a lot more peaceful altogether. Then again, I haven't drank alcohol for over 3 years now, so I don't go out to the bars and stuff. I mean, I might with a friend, but still, just yeah, not a fan of alcohol. And actually, the more I ponder about this stuff and link things like religion and science and just human behavior in general, disappointment, shame, guilt, reaction, all of the scientific observation-y type things that someone with a science degree would do. Anyways, so that's why I like these like slightly longer recordings because then I'm not in feeling like a rush to get things out. But I don't know. Like we'll see. I know some people wouldn't want to sit and watch a whole video for about an hour, but you can pause it, you can come back, take like 5 days doing it, kind of like how I do a lot of things. So, but anyways, back to the concepts. So, religion, Jesus's blood is wine was basically the jumping off point because it was like once you relate that alcohol is a good source of a lot of crime, criminal behavior, and criminal activity, just all of it, and in either directly or indirectly. And I was also like slightly linking that to shame or disappointment. That is also a byproduct of religion. And granted, I do have a history with religion. I grew up in a history with. I grew up in the Methodist Church, served as an acolyte. Like I brought the light of the Christ candle in, lit it for before the service every Sunday, and then at the end I would go and pick up the light, and I had like a robe and everything, and I had like this candlestick, this like fishing pole sized candlestick. Anyways, it was a big to do. So there was only one of me. It's like, anyways, and I grew up studying the Bible, the ways that it was important to a Methodist. And that's why I feel like I have a bit of an insight into the differences when comparing and contrasting Catholicism and Methodistism, or the Methodist Church. I mean, there are some pretty big differences like that, the severity of things and like things that they focus on. And, just because of all of the focus on the rules per se in Catholicism, it gets a bad rap for being like overly overbearing, and which it is. And even if you go to one of their services, they have the little kneel bars where you can get down on your knees to pray, whereas you go to a Methodist church, you just have a seat, bow your head. It's already uncomfortable enough in a wooden pew, but let alone you don't got to get down on your knees like some kind of slave or something, or servant. And so, and not trying to knock Catholicism, like I know that's a big part of the country, especially, or the world really, sorry. I mean, this country especially, but even when I went down to Costa Rica, it's pretty big down there, and a bunch of Latin countries. It's still the truth. You got the Pope, you got that huge following. Anyways, I digress. But there's just a few things that I protest. Being grown up as a Protestant, basically, is the best way to put it, I think, or one of the better ways. But and now I don't even really believe in a God per se. I do like to scalably apply my thinking that it might exist, he or she. We don't have any evidence whatsoever, like except for some writings that are like thousands of year olds, and that's fine. You can have your faith, but as far as like the big important decisions, I wouldn't necessarily base them on that until there's actual evidence. But there's not evidence against either. Anyways, so religion is not the enemy. Even though we have like my blood is wine, basically, like that was really, as far as the way I see it, it was meant to be like whenever you drink your wine, think of me, think of the blessings, that I've bestowed upon you and enjoy them. And like a lot of people end up interpreting that as like, hey, feel guilty. It's there's like a whole word for it. It's like the gift giver's not remorse, but like gifting anxiety, or I don't know, but or it's an unofficial contract that you enter into when you give a gift, basically. And like and that is completely true. That's why holidays are kind of awkward a lot of times. At least I know when I was growing up, I would try to give the best gift, and I didn't care what I got so much as long as, I guess that was more recent. When I was a kid, I was actually more about just getting stuff, but still hope the parents liked whatever. Anyways, I digress. There is an anxiety linked to giving a gift because there's an implied debt owed, once that you have to return the favor or something. So, anyways. So that's just one thing. And since we don't really have anyone that we could have asked, or like supposedly it was all written well after they were all dead and gone, so it wasn't like it's based on word of mouth. And anyways, no evidence is my point, but I still like to act in the way that it does that. Whew, sorry, I hate talking about religion so much, but it is important because half of our country is torn with one political party, and the majority of that party is still very deeply rooted in religion, but both parties are, so it is very important. Let's go and get some more of these pumpkins. Anyways, yeah, so not trying to knock on religion, but I am pointing out the flaws in it that are leading to a lot of the world's problems. And without these problems, we wouldn't have to work so hard in fields like cybersecurity. It would just be people being kind, respecting each other's property, and et cetera, et cetera. But as it is, the main reason cybersecurity is such a booming field, and it's exploded. Ever since the computer became, everybody's pocket and everybody's linked directly to their bank accounts. Like, we don't think about all these things that we take for granted. We just, phone work or phone doesn't work. Like that's where we're at, and there's a lot of cyber criminals out there or malicious actors or even people committing malicious acts because that's another one of my big projects is like basically communicating that we shouldn't pigeonhole people by labels into a specific group for life. I mean, especially like felons. I talk a lot about Department of Corrections, and law enforcement and all that, but like the actual corrections aspect, you get called a felon, you are a felon. Like anytime you commit a felony, like you are now forever less than human. You're less than a person. I mean, I don't even know if it's three-fifths, but that is our style, with the whole three-fifths clause back in the slave days. So, and even though we might not, explicitly say it, you try to get a job after having a felony, you got to wait a good 10 years, depending on the crime. And then, some situations it's getting better, but especially if you want to work for, well, actually, government is one of the more relaxed ones about it. I kind of feel like, as long as obviously they're going to know about it and they'll make a decision. But I've heard of more success in there just because I have worked with reintegration specialists, had good long conversations with some of my friends and family and all that. So like this is what Buena Vista people do. Like it's their main industry. So, anyways, forgot where I was going with all that. Well, things are getting better. We're doing more community corrections. The drug laws are being reconsidered, and really, it's like once the stigma of marijuana is lifted, or cannabis, as people have even tried to start calling it, because that seems to be less of a dirty word. Like marijuana has just been known so long as like, oh, that's illegal, and like even though most people that are even the least slightest familiar with it are just like, oh, okay, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's about on par with having like an open bottle in public. It's like, oh, that's kind of risky too. It's like equally dangerous. Whereas, anyways, that's a whole nother video. But let's see, should we take some of this over? Yeah, get some emeralds. But anyways, it's just the linkage of all these things. Like you got Jesus in there. You got and that was one of the biggest things on my Twitter rant was that part of my thing in the Methodist Church was we drank grape juice instead of wine, and we had a big chunk of this pretty good bread instead of the little wafer crackers. And so I thought that was pretty cool. It was still weird, like chanting the thing and going and getting the body and the blood of Christ. And anytime you're talking about like cannibalism type stuff like that, of course it's not meant to be like that, but it's like if you really, I mean, I've seen Christianity explained in like the worst ways possible, to be funny, and it really is. Like you got a lot of stretches there, but that's just when you look at it through the right lens or the right perspective. So, and that's true with just about everything. Whoops. So. Anyways, but not to dog on it. Like people's faith is important. It's and if it turns out to be true, then yeah, especially important. But just because they believe one way or another, as long as it's not impacting other people, I digress on that. But the linking of it, it's the making alcohol acceptable, at least in anywhere that's even friendly to Christian. Alcohol's like right there. It's like, oh well, I got to get my wine. It's for religious purposes, which is funny because you talk about native ceremonies and their rituals with psychedelics, and I believe they are allowed stuff like that in prison. They're allowed to use like certain ayahuascas and stuff, or peyote, or because I know it's peyote and when they're like not in prison, but in prison, I believe they're. I don't know, but and that might change too, especially with the new laws in Colorado. Like we might even be administering, psychedelic medication to people who've committed crimes or committed felonies. See, that way we're not labeling them. I try to talk like that, but it's hard. I mean, we're just used to talking one way for the longest time. But, anyways, yeah, just because of the fact that they can help with addiction. And so, and I'm talking addiction to everything: alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco of all kind, um, pedophilia, like the actual brain condition where you're addicted to, or even okay with, sex acts against a minor. or even sex crimes in general, rape, forceful, and all that. Like that type of behavior can be rectified by some. Hopefully, I mean that's at least the theory, and I really need to find some more sources. I keep throwing around this link to Johns Hopkins because it's a pretty respectable hospital, and so that was really cool that I found that. And that one at least explicitly says that mushrooms cure depression, so like 6 months to a year at a time. Like one dose, one clinic visit is enough to relieve you of your depression for up to 6 months to a year. And it's like when you start throwing around months, especially with, if you know anybody who's been taking depression medication, pills all the time, gaining weight, having all these extra problems, mood swings, like, they might not be depressed per se, but they've got a lot of other things that happen because of it. So even if it's just a one-time treatment, like if you just like ignore the fact that it's mushrooms and they've been illegal for so long and so evil and like, oh, those are drugs, like, oh, they're loony on some mushrooms. Like, no, it's like this one substance, this one thing can make you not depressed better than like what hundreds or thousands of dollars of pills and like all that research and I get it, like big pharma needs to pay for that research, but at the same time, I mean, we're at a point now where there's no excuse really not to take these shortcuts, and they're not even shortcuts, they're just like the preferred method or the recommended. Let's see, get done with this. Oh man, actually we might need some more. Yeah, we do have this. Anyways, so we are coming a long way, and I attribute a lot of that to communication technology. Social media, as cringy and as grungy as sometimes it gets, it's still like it's constantly improving. Let's see, where should I put this? So you can't put it right up against the ceiling because it won't open unless it's an upside down staircase that I did up there, but I did not. So, um, we'll just do this. Anyway, so common sense drug reform, that's actually going to take away the majority of crimes in general, especially considering alcohol is tied to so many of the crimes committed. It just once we get past the stigma of marijuana, that's gonna just go down. Like we need smoke shops to replace bars. We need, or even just like libraries or reading rooms or whatever. It could be maybe not axe throwing, but we have that right next to a bar. So whatever. Like, I think I'd actually trust someone who's stoned throw an axe more than someone who's drunk. Like that's actually kind of scary that's even a thing. But anyways, and once we get past that stigma, a lot of the alcohol related things are going to go away, especially like drunk driving and stuff. That's going to reduce a lot of fatalities. I mean, like literally just saving lives with some policy reform. I'm not saying that like yeah, weed's going to save the world. It sounds really weird when you just say it like that, but reducing the dependency on alcohol and really once more countries in the world follow suit, that's going to be the tipping point. That's going to be when everybody stops caring so much about, this type of democracy versus this type of democracy, or, or this government or this country, and then we'll slowly get away from our military fascination or our runway military spending, because then it's like there's no need. Once countries kind of come together and agree to more stuff, we can eliminate one of the biggest expenses we've ever known, and that's military. I mean, it's going to take time and it's not going to be outright, but like as we depend less and less on that, you know, because nobody wants it. I mean, we're all tired. I know I'm tired. Like 20 years in Iraq, like, and of course, I no, don't get me wrong. I haven't served or done anything and did any of the heavy lifting, but that's exactly more of the point. Is like, look at how much heavy lifting people had to do, just for what? Like, oops, didn't work. It's like, it's not cool. So, anyways, and it's the money too. Like we live off of selling weapons. Anyways, that's my little spiel there. So, trying to think of what else. Oh yeah, the new age thing. Let's talk about that for a bit. So I was thinking about like the end of the world, and we got all apocalyptic about what was it 2012? Whoops, I need emeralds in case a trader comes by. Um, yeah, basically the end of the world was supposed to happen in 2012, and the Mayan calendar and all that. And then people started theorizing like, oh, maybe it was just all the room they had in the calendar. That's all they wanted to do. Or maybe it's not the end of the world, it's the end of an age or the end of an era. And now that actually has a lot of, very relevant concepts with that. So think about the end of an age, the end of an era. And I think I've got a phrase up lined up for this one too. It's either survivalism versus thrivism, or surviving versus thriving. There you go. No. Anyways, but survival versus thrival. There you go. So I purposely made it like some dumb word that doesn't exist. It's like, that would make it more catchy and more rememberable than be like, wait a minute, oh, it's that nonsense, but it's actually not nonsense because if you look at human history, and I'm talking about from the time that we started recording documents and writing things down, that's the definition of history and prehistory. If it was before official records were kept in the form of writing. And we're also including cuneiform tablets from. Oh, sorry, I just forgot who that was. Well, I know it was cuneiform, and they used clay tablets, and it was not the Byzantines, but anyways, it's been a long time since I've done any history stuff, but basically that was like the beginning of history. And I know I rambled about this in those little shorter musings, but one of my favorite classes, which I was surprised about, was communication technology. And I keep talking about that because, like, I remember the first day it was like she held up a pen and she was like, "This is communication technology." And this is at the time where I'm learning about, like computer programming and C++ plus plus and all these like advanced things and things that take up like 12 to 15 hours of my day and just like all of this. And I'm thinking, high tech solutions and everything. And she's holding up a pen and I'm like, oh, okay. And then, the pen is mightier than the sword. But then she started explaining, it was like, this was the first way that we communicated ideas over long distances. We could start sending letters or sending reports and across the battle lines and all this. You know, and especially like with the advances of the pen that got easier and easier. You think about movable type with, what was that? Yeah, the one guy who started movable type, like Hans Gutenberg or something, the Gutenberg press, I want to say. But anyways, yeah. So, and as communication technology evolves or advances, the actual communication that's being sent and received gets better as well. And we can definitely see that with Twitter. And that's why, love it or hate it, for whatever other reasons, the actual technology itself is astounding because it is forcing people to condense very complex ideas and topics into little samples, little bite-sized things that people can process and comfortably. Because at the end of the day, if you have to read or like watching these videos, if you had to watch like this whole video in one sitting, oh, that would be unbearable. Like even I get up and take breaks like after an hour or two. Oh, also, because I got a lot of other stuff to do. I gotta adult. We're not all the best at it, but we gotta go easy on ourselves because, it's going through it, learning. And that's the other thing too. Like the big thing that I was talking about the other day was about shame. Whether, because it's not really, in my opinion, in religion, specifically Christianity, because I know that better than Islam or any of the others. But with Christianity, there's like an implied guilt, like the original sin, and then people don't really get a lot of times anyway. They don't get the chance to explain the rest of that, like, but they're not wanting or well, God, Jesus, all that. It feels corny even talking like that, but to be honest. But at the same time, I respect people wanting to do it. But the thing is, and the reason it feels dirty is because people don't always get the second half, and which is, they say that it's almost like selling votes, I guess, actually, I would say that, because, the original sin, like, you need to come to church to get this sin removed. Especially as someone who plays the Dark Souls games, you have your curse, or I forget what it's called, but you are cursed, and you have like the symbol of the cursed, and like you have to remove it later, and that's almost what religion feels like. It's like, you didn't ask for this, but here it is, and you bear it with you for life until you do this. So, anyways, it's like, I get it back in the day, and I even get it, like why they wanted to do it. Like people think automatically, oh, it's the money, and like churches just have all this money lying around. Not really. I mean, yeah, some of them do, like the Olstein things. Like that guy's got like the mega mansions, mega churches, and they should be. That should all be like seized. I don't know. I'm sorry. Like you shouldn't be living in a mansion. Like who needs that really? Especially like nowadays. Anyways, with that communication technology, you can instantly see someone's living conditions around the world. Or you could do like I just did. I travel for work and I've seen for myself like what a couple of the other parts of the world are like. Not everywhere, of course, it's you definitely don't want to generalize, but at the same time, it's like there are some places, and even just around this country, like Oregon, I was out there, and there's like these like tent cities that are popping up everywhere now, and it's like just because we gotta fix the root problems, we gotta, yeah. So, anyways, and which Colorado's doing, being very proactive about people experiencing homelessness, and see what I did there? Trying to change the stigma on that too. Like they're not homeless people; they're people experiencing homelessness. Because oftentimes it is just temporary. I mean, and even if it's like for a good 5, 10 years, like you think about recovering alcoholics that were like crazy drunk for 5, 10 years. They lost that kind of bit of their life too. So, or at least some of it. Like, it could have been better. It's not completely lost, and it could always be worse. You could be sitting in prison for 5 to 10 years, which a lot of people do. And so, all of these things that we are trying to fix, we're trying to work on, and yeah. So, and it's in the best interest of everyone too. Like I say, I've got a lot of family in law enforcement. Like you want the cops to have an easier time. They'll be less trigger happy, less like paranoid, less threatened, like, and a lot safer too. I mean, because nobody needs that. They don't need crazed people throwing knives at them, like shooting guns. Like, and I know, and we're not going to get into like whether this one was right or whether this one wasn't. Like, I'll tell you, it's stressful just dealing with drunk people working in a pizza shop in a college town. Like, we're dealing with a bunch of drunk people all the time and delivering and like driving with a bunch of drunk drivers out there. Like, yeah, people need to stop breaking the law. I mean, like, so I do respect and like, respect the heck out of my law enforcement stuff. At the same time, though, they've been forced to enforce a bunch of bogus laws. Now that, which Colorado's fixing, I mean, weed's legal, shrooms are now legal. Like, I mean, they're really more concerned about like, are you okay to drive? Like, and even if you have been drinking, like, can you function? But well, they're pretty strict on the limit now, and you really shouldn't. But anyways, that goes back to until our society gets less biased against weed and like so pro alcohol. And that's the thing, is like a lot of people aren't necessarily pro alcohol. It's just that's all there is to recreate with. So that's what people do. I mean, we've built entire industries out of it, like breweries, like brewery tours. Like it's like a Willy Wonka factory to go get drunk. And people that work there have to deal with it too. People throwing up, like physically sick, vomiting out blood and all this. Like, if you try to describe that to someone who didn't know, like if I like how Neil deGrasse, I always mix it up, but how Neil talks about it. If there was an alien visitor that came and like just witnessed the stuff that we do, like, oh yeah, we like to go out on the weekends. We drink this liquid that's rotten and is fermented and like all this nasty stuff and like basically old, yet we throw out all our other food when it gets even a day old. Like, but we'll drink this stuff that we've had rotting in a cellar for 50 years. And it rots our brain and it's just degenerative and all this and like, oh, and it causes all these health problems and we vomit blood and it's like, what are they doing? Well, and honestly, a lot of it is getting rid of some guilt, getting rid of some disappointment in oneself. Um, you know, Especially if you talk about like, oh, my clock's ticking, I don't have kids, or oh, what am I doing with my life? I'm only doing blah blah blah, and then I'm doing X Y Z. It's like, oh, or I'm in prison for 5, 10 years. Oh, life is pointless, like, or whatever the case may be. And things seem so daunting, which again, not as much nowadays. Like it is getting better with such instant communication and verification that things are in such a way. Like we can get proof, instant proof of like some other place and how they're doing with a live feed or stream or something. Or you can actually ask people from around the world, hey, how are you doing, or how's it going in this area? And they can tell you. You don't have to rely on some news station or any kind of agenda hidden, or even just for ratings too. Like not every news is just like out evil and stuff. Most aren't. But just like our politics, and yeah, we're gonna talk about the most awkward topics in this video. I'm sorry, I keep wanting to call it a stream or like a live stream even, but no, it's just me talking to myself, and I love it. So, and one day I'll probably get back to like, there's just a lot of anxiety, like, you know, if you have an audience that are actually like live watching you and talking to you. Like this is pre-recorded, and I might be doing this more, especially because there's the announcement. Then it's like, okay, hey, you're encouraged to come watch this. It's like, no, watch this when you get some time. Don't worry about it. Although I do respect the streamers. Like I love watching. There's a few Twitch ones I do. Like Anthony writes code. Citrusine. Like if you look at my profile, there's a lot of streamers that they do good work. Like they have a lot of time dedicated to their stream careers and everything, and I respect that. That is good, and it shows. But I'm more of a I want to make some of these videos, like put some thoughts out there, maybe learning to do some YouTube editing. That is what I'm working on now. But anyways, sorry, like a little noise as a reminder. Anyways, politics. So as it is, and this was actually my like third prong. We got religious, we got alcohol, and we got or like what to pay attention to in religion. Not that it's bad, but that we need to focus on certain aspects on it if we choose to be of that faith. And that's only speaking to Christianity. I imagine Islam is very similar. I know it was from what I learned from my old roommates, but like as far as the important things, like it was basically like be kind, just and literally they said Allah was God. It was what their word for it. So, anyways, the only difference was Muhammad and Jesus and like what to do in like a holy war and that got blown out and then that was like a textbook or not textbook but that was the schnazzy thing to say, like, oh, yeah, holy war, that's all they're good for. I'm like, no, it was a horrible result of 9/11 and all that. But anyways, we don't need to go down there. But politics. So the whole structure of our political, or our politics is you got to buy votes, either by scaring people into believing that only you can protect them, so they need to vote you in the office, or only they can be in the office to do the job that's gonna, keep you safe or keep your money in your pocket, or, or yeah, that's actually the two main ones. The scare tactics. It's like, and this does benefit the gun companies. And I know, whatever you feel one way or the other, my stance is we should be able to have guns responsibly and probably not in city areas. So if you're gonna have them, at least have them stored out of town in a gun club or something like that. Like, just be smart and responsible, like most people are. I mean, especially Buena Vista, we were a big gun community, and we had a prison right there, and we had people going into the prison, every day in, day out, with, well, one time now, anyways, with guns in their cars and stuff, and like, as long as well, I don't think anyways, you'd get people hunting on the weekends and then going to the prison on the weekdays, and sometimes they'd have their guns and all that, and it's like, you know, if as long as we're responsible. I think the only real fatality that I knew about was, actually, I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about that. Well, no, it was in the news. Someone got killed with a ladle, a cooking ladle. Like it wasn't even a gun or anything. It was just like, sorry, that's really messed up to laugh about killing, but like when you're talking about like weapons and stuff and all the things that they do keep under lock and key, yeah, a cooking ladle, I guess makes sense. But and that's a horrible thing too. Like we shouldn't even be having people there, and that's why, I respect the heck out of Sea Dreams, I think is her name. That was the one that she posted a tweet, and that's who I was responding to about alcohol being the basis for all or the majority of crimes. There you go. Because we're talking a bunch about criminal reform. They're adamant leaders about that, and it needs to happen. And it's like it's something that a lot of people don't know about, or if they know, it's not an in-depth enough synopsis to really form a good opinion on it, or they just dismiss it outright as like whatever. And I think that's why there was such an interest in TV shows like Orange is the New Black, because that was very popular because it showed like this perspective that a lot of people don't have, or if they do, well, there's just varying ways. Like I don't know, I've never been to prison, but I've had a checkered past, I like to call it, and so I've had experience with institutions and and that is the trend nowadays. Like we've been to jail a couple times, there is that, but which everybody does that who breaks the law, but like. Or, well, not even. I think maybe just get booked. But anyways, I digress. Like, my point is, we were very quick to just throw people in prison for several years at a time, for just whatever. And it's like now we're starting to realize that it doesn't really work like that. And then you got for-profit prisons, which is just a horrible idea. Oh, and that was another thing. So, yeah, we've got politics, which I'll get to. I haven't really actually talked about that idea yet, but also the shoot. Now I got all stuck on the politics. With the politics, it's taking money out of campaigning. Sorry, that's the major thing change we need to make, and that's why I was leading into like scaring your voters into voting for you or buying your votes, lobbyists, all that stuff. We need to take money out of campaigning and only allow politicians to do Zoom meetings, like virtual online town halls, talk with the voters, do question and answer sessions. And people have to be respectful too. I mean, you're talking to a potential congressperson or president. Like, it should all be like that. We should not have TV commercials anymore. I know, like, that's going to be a hit to some people's business, but let's be honest. I mean, you were making money off of something that shouldn't have been around anyway. We should have never had money in politics to begin with, because then it is all about who has the money, and then their interests get served first, and then the rest of us get served last. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but I haven't bought even a Super Bowl commercial, let alone a political ad. Like, right, that might be a little backwards, but anyways, money should not instantly do that. It's just too quick and easy for corruption. Not everybody that gets money is very philanthropic. In fact, most people aren't, which is kind of messed up. But anyways, there's that. But as far as shoot, now I can't remember. Oh, that'll come back to me. But but basically, it was yeah, alcohol, religion, what to focus on with religion, um, criminal justice reform, proactive or preventative versus after the fact corrections, and oh, the other thing that I went off on my rant was psychotropics too, and how we treat our mental health. So that's a big factor as well. And the current going is like if someone exhibits psychotic behavior or has to be checked into a mental facility, they by default get put on like lithium and olanzapine and all these psychotropics, just to kind of level you out. And that's like the first part. And then they go into like the therapy and everything. Could be residential for part of it. And that's assuming you don't get put in jail too during all this stretch. And if you do, there's a chance that you can easily go off of your meds, which actually induces psychosis. So, yeah, there's a whole story behind that. But um, that is the point. Is like if you do mismanage your medications when you're on psychotropics, it can induce psychosis to the nature of worse than what you were trying to prevent it with the pills. So, which is why I'm so excited about the mushrooms and depression thing, because I know a lot of people that were on depression medication, and it was just god awful. It was horrible. Like, yeah, like weight gain. Like sometimes you were depressed even though you're taking this medication and not be. And then there's that learning, not really learning curve, but the ramping up time or whatever until you become normalized with the depression medication. And it's the same with any kind of psychosis too. Like they might have a few different types of psychotropics, but for the most part, they're pushing pills down your throat and they're not exactly helpful. I mean, they might, for the little bit of benefit that you gain from them, there's a huge potential for mismanagement, abuse, not intentionally even. Like, it could just be like, oh, even I forgot this and I'm on these new pills. And next thing you know, you're talking to like angels and demons and the whole world is the matrix and all this like crazy stuff. It literally seems like reality because you're on these drugs that actually cause psychosis if you don't do them right. So yeah, that's a major concern, area of concern, and also relates to people experiencing homelessness too. Like if you look at the actual factors of it, alcohol, it's huge. Got laid off from a job and didn't have enough time to bounce back or any resources or any family to depend on, or you just haven't been in touch with your family for whatever reason. And there's all these different factors that lead up to people experiencing homelessness. And again, it's a very temporary thing for the most part. Like, even the ones that are really experiencing the hardest. Actually, I can't say that for sure. I take that back. I feel like I do know a few. Because back when I used to work at a Subway in college, I knew a few regular homeless people. And we tried to be nice, but at the same time, I know I was kind of a prick to them for a while. like rolling my eyes like, oh, this person again, thinking that they're a burden on me. And actually, let me take that back. They were if they were drunk. Like that was my big cutoff thing. And most of the time they were. We Most subways are right next to a liquor store, and they'd be asking for money to get alcohol, and then to come in and get a sandwich, and make a whole thing of it, which would be fine. Maybe if they did the sandwich first and then the alcohol, but really just if they didn't do the alcohol, I would have been totally fine with them. Like, I'd make them sandwiches. I'd let them, go take a shower in the sink. Like, whatever. Like, let's get you some clothes, man. Like, but they come in, they're all drunk and stuff, and that's when it got, unpleasant. So, in fact, I had one dude defecate on the floor. Well, he didn't like stop and defecate. He just kind of came out while he was walking, like power walking to the bathroom. Anyways, so what I'm saying is like these problems that I'm trying to solve, they're very relevant to me. Like I have direct experience with a lot of these things, and it's like, and I rack my brain about it all the time, and I feel like it is the most important type of work. Well, maybe not the most. I take that back. Disability tech, or I, that even sounds bad. Like, and it's definitely not like handy capable or handicap technology. I don't know, but I refer to it as accessibility most of the times. But basically, anything that can help someone who has suffered some kind of injury, specifically stroke victims. I mean, I actually have a very close friend who just had a stroke, and so now I'm like all worried about that. And I did know this person, this other person, that they had a lot of equipment to do their job having a stroke. They had to use voice commands and basically be like barking orders at their computer, and they had limited. Oh, it's just really bad. And these are brain issues. Sorry, injuries, diseases, all the different things. And that's another exciting thing about the mushrooms is on that Johns Hopkins website that I keep throwing around. I should probably put it on here too. I don't know. I like to keep that stuff for the tucked away for the people that really do, so I'm not like reported or something like, oh, he's a druggie or whatever. Like, no, it's someone who has studied human behavior for quite a long time, works as a cybersecurity professional, has friends and family in law enforcement and corrections, and I go on and on. And I'll say it, a million times, and it's like people are still surprised, like, oh, wait, you support marijuana? It's like, hey, have you not been listening? So, anyways, sorry, I digress a lot, and that's just because I've just been experienced to whenever you try to talk about these things to certain people, it's just like, especially the older generation, which I feel like that's even getting better too, but it's just because it was the way it was for their entire lifetime. Like, drugs are bad and they make you into a bad person. And once you're a bad person, it takes, several years to change into a good person, because we couldn't be keeping there for longer than they need to. They need, 10, 15 years so they don't go kill people. It's like, nah. And then you got to wonder how many crimes were actually committed in relation to psychotropics or mental health medications. So there's an even bigger thing, like a bigger reason to investigate this. Be like, wait a minute, the medications we're using, not only do they not work, they're causing like death and murder and all this, and or even death by cop, or all of the gruesome things that we actually have going on. So, anyways, it's a very exciting time with the naturalistic medicines of mushrooms and DMT. I think I've even heard, well, I know I saw AOC talking about MDMA, which is the active ingredient in ecstasy, which even that, like, I mean, people are already doing it out, like often with alcohol. And it's like, if alcohol were just to like disappear, you gotta wonder what, concerts and festivals and even bars would even like look like if it was like a smoke lounge, and then, you could still have a dance floor and doing these things. Anyways, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see. But as it is now, alcohol, yeah, it's fun, but oh my God, like it is, what did I say on the last video? It's borrowed fun. You get to enjoy it for a little bit, but then, you either get a hangover or you do something you regret or you just don't remember at all. Like those are the really severe nights where it's like, I could have killed somebody. I could have killed 100 somebodies. I definitely touched on that on the last videos, like the Hangover franchise. Like their entire series of movies is based off of, oh, I stole Mike Tyson's tiger. Like who in their right mind? And that's the key words right there, in their right mind. Like you are not, well, you could be classified as insane while you're drinking, just as easily. Like, you're not dependable, you're not trustworthy. Like, not that you're going to go out and do evil things, but like, you can't even control your body, your motor functions, like, stand up straight without, like, falling over or like looking straight. Like, definitely can't operate machinery or a car. You know, that becomes lethal. And then you want to trust this person. Like, anyways, so it's just that's why it's so incredulous to me that people that it's just been drilled into your minds like your entire lives. So and something similar can be said for technology and the youngsters of today's age, like my kids especially. They just do all this like cool techie stuff. Like they're so smart and ahead of it, and all the kids are. Like I hear stories from my other friends who have kids, and they're just like, yeah, and they're showing me things that I didn't know how to do, and there's this thing on this iPhone that I could do that, yeah. And so another reason I'm not worried, like they're already so smart. Learning geometry and trig in grade school, like, oh my gosh. But anyways, I digress. Um, but the same could be said about generational things for the older generations, like having that as the normal, especially for so long, and that all ties into politicians having to buy votes or scare votes, or scare up some votes. Basically, it's like vanilla terrorism. Because honestly, if you look up the definition of terrorism, it is like to rule through fear or coercion, and like it's like okay, or to govern or to rule, and so or to like force people, which makes sense. You look at 9/11, like that was definitely an act of terrorism, whoever did it, but still not sure. But anyways, it worked. It was fear and coercion and death to basically slant the U.S. but and freedom or whatever, like however you want to interpret that. Basically, it was like a red flag to go into or false flag to get into the Middle East for 20 years and make some military companies a lot of money. So, and that is our business. It's what we're doing with Ukraine now. And don't get me wrong, I support Ukraine. Like I don't want anyone to die over there. And I do go touch on that a bit in the last videos, the little shorties, but um, we all need to stop killing each other over land. It's not even like it's not worth it. Death is a permanent, very permanent solution to a temporary problem. And so we just get into this normal like, oh yeah, war and like people bombing each other and all this. It's like no, that's so messed up. In fact, that's the only areas. Those are the only areas that we have food insecurities right now. I remember I looked that up during that whole thing with Elon saying, "Yeah, if you can find me a good solution to end world hunger, I'll donate so many, I'll sell so much stock, and I'll give so many billions of dollars if you can give me a plan." And that's exactly it. In order to fix world food insecurity and starvation, world hunger, you have to fix world war. Now, don't worry, don't go getting triggered. Like, not like a world war. We're talking every conflict that has war, specifically a lot of countries in Africa, Yemen, now Ukraine, all these places that it's just like people just arguing over power and who's in charge when it's like most of the world has already moved on from that. Like, our own government changes leadership quite often, needs to change more. And I think we're working towards that too, flushing out the people that have just been stagnant and just let us follow the same ways for so long. But anyways, even if not, like we change presidents every 4 years. So even if you just really hate who you got, like the last two presidents, I mean, it's not been like very moderate opinions of either of them. You either love them or hate them. It's like, I don't know. But anyways, um, we survived. We're fine. And in fact, we're more than fine. Like you look at places like Ukraine, like we're definitely doing okay. We're not getting bombed. People are not dying from war and stuff. They are dying from police, and police are dying from crazed out drug addicts. And drug addicts are, and see right there, I even misspoke. I don't want to call them drug addicts. I want to call them people suffering from substance abuse issues, or even just people with substance abuse issues. Still better than a drug addict. But yet I slip up all the time. Like I didn't do that intentionally. That was a faux pas. Anyways, um, and that's the importance of it too. Because if you pigeonhole someone to that category or that label, then they're gonna start to believe you, even if not at first. Like eventually, and especially if they hear it more than one time. Like it's like racism. It's that kind of doesn't matter what you think about it. It's how it's received on the other end. Anyways, I definitely digress. But and actually, how long have we been going? Seems kind of long time. Okay, so we're almost to an hour, and actually that's good. I was just about to say I need to get up and do a couple of things. I might do another one, but really mostly what I wanted to talk about was just like the religious aspect and really just what to pay attention to. It's not to shame anyone. Like religion is great. I'm not trying to knock it. It helps people. It gives people hope. And if there turns out to be a God, then yeah, then we have a God. So it's just I'm a little more skeptical just because you know having to be a sciencey person or a science by trade, scientist by trade and by education. It's like you can't go around just saying like, "Oh, why did you make this decision?" "Oh, God told me to do it." Like, no, you can't do that. So, anyways, however, everywhere else it's fine. You can believe in God if you want to. That's your right. So, it's just when you start, I don't know, like I don't really want Jesus to take the wheel because I don't believe Jesus exists, and even if he did, he's not going to take the wheel right now. I mean, I know that's supposed to be a metaphor, but that is just a great example. It's like you're entrusting something that I mean, there's been so many spoofs about it, like Twilight Zone, Rick and Morty. Oh, actually, we should probably talk about that too. I love Rick and Morty, except for I cannot stand that one episode, just the few seconds. Like they had to go about it like Morty making out with Rick, and it's like I don't know. To me, and especially with someone with family that works in corrections, I was raised, you know, basically treat people who commit sex crimes against minors as a different way. Like, and I don't know. As far as the whole consent thing, I believe that kids can do things with other kids. Like, that shouldn't be wrong. I mean, within reason. Like, yeah. But that's kind of one of those things. Like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. Like, that's not for me. But when I was that age, like, I know I wanted to go do those things, and that I'm glad I was able to do stuff like that. But like, definitely should be within like that 4 year gap when you're that age. And then when you get older, it becomes less important. But there's just a point where I don't know. Like I just, anyways, my whole point with that is they get the worst rap in the prison system. People who commit sex crimes against minors and people who commit sex crimes in general. They get the hardest punishment because everyone else in there hates you at that point. And and actually a lot of my trouble stemmed from standing up against someone who's committing sex crimes, not against kids, but this guy that I got into an altercation with, he was committing sex crimes against other college students. So, yeah, and having been security and all that, it was kind of my job, but I should have just, neither here nor there. That's my stance on it. So, anyways, the same approach should be used for that as well. Like all crimes, all criminal behavior, all people committing crimes, not necessarily criminals, because we got to remove that stigma as well. But yeah, it doesn't change the fact that the crime needs to not happen. Like however you want to like explain it, the crime needs to stop. So the way that I propose we do it is more preventative. Get ahead of it before it becomes a crime, and then be done with it. It cuts down on law enforcement's time, cuts down on people's hassle, and it cuts down on prison population. Like, and of course, who doesn't want a crime-free world? But we need to remove the factors that lead to it, including alcohol, the cost of living, uh, the stress and anxiety from politics and religion, the depression and shame and the disappointment, either from self or perceived from others. Like, there's a lot of things that we can address that we should be, and we kind of are. I mean, not saying that like absolutely nothing's been being done about this. Like I know I just said not too long ago that prisons are being less popular. Like we're using more community corrections, more halfway house type scenarios, stuff like that, instead of prisons. And like people that qualify. And actually, I had a family member that worked with the boot camp back in Buena Vista, which was a great program that even people that were in prison for nonviolent crimes were able to join the boot camp and basically do like a military style 3 month boot camp, just like our military does. Yeah. So, which still seems pretty intense, but for getting a lot of time commuted off your sentence, I mean, of course, there was a lot of people wanting to do it, and so it was a very popular program, and it did. It helped a lot of people drastically reduce, like cut several years off of their sentence. I don't want to say like cut a third off or a half off because I don't think it was quite a half, but when you're talking multiple years behind bars, even getting a year of your life back is, I would do 3 months to get a year back easily. Anyways, so yeah, I think that's pretty good. I'm trying to think. There was a one thing I forgot because I don't know. It wasn't analysis paralysis, which that actually is a pretty good concept. I'm like really glad I learned about that. But no, this was so we take the money out of campaigning, you know. Oh, and with that money, we can still have the fundraisers and stuff and the drives, but just have it go towards fixing our communities. Seriously, like we could have free healthcare, we could have free education, like zero risk too. And that's why I feel like a lot of people don't even try for university or higher education, because it's like, well, it's a lot of money to just take a gamble on if it's not going to pay off. Oh, oh, it only lets me go for an hour. Cool. Sorry, I don't know if you can see that on top, but that's good. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Like that was basically what I wanted to talk about. Was like, you know, we need to be careful what we believe about. The blood of Christ shouldn't be alcohol. I kind of want to smoke a blunt with the Pope and Snoop Dogg one day. I might try to do that. I just think that would seal it. That would seal the deal. That would change, Catholicism and all the underlying, all the other different branches of Christianity. Would just be like, yep, okay, alcohol is not so great, but it's going to take a lot of work, and that's going to shut down a lot of industries, and so that's why I know it hasn't happened until now. So, anyways, I mean, I don't pretend to think that that's not going to hurt a lot of people's incomes, but they'll find other things. They can get a job in tech. They can learn, watch my other videos, But either way, um, yeah, it's been fun. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and I'm gonna upload this right now. I'll see y'all next time, y'all. All right, see ya.